I was asked to head this commission, and we established many task forces. And one of the task forces was on the origins question. And at the beginning, I was told, well, this is a natural outbreak, what's called a zoonotic disease, that a virus has jumped from bats maybe to intermediate species like a pangolin or a civet, palm civet, which have been implicated in such diseases. In the Middle East, there's a coronavirus that is in the same broad category as SARS-CoV-2, but is carried through camels. So I was told at the beginning by scientists, well, this is a zoonotic disease, a natural outbreak. Then we started hearing, well, maybe it came out of a lab because there's a laboratory in Wuhan, China, working on this virus. I said, nah, that didn't sound right. People explained to me, that's kind of crazy conspiracy stuff. And then when people started saying, China did it, China did it, China did it, and China was used clearly, kind of weaponized by the Trump campaign in 2020, deliberately. There were even background documents by the political advisors, blast China, this is our approach. You even felt more, this is, a natural outbreak and people are using it for bad purposes, for political twisting the facts. Okay, I spent a lot of time listening to a lot of scientists, and serious scientists started telling me, we don't quite know. This isn't so clear cut. And I talked to leading scientists in the United States, very senior, very, very talented people, said, Jeff, don't jump to a conclusion, because while there's one narrative right now, there's actually a lot of reasons to worry. Okay, so the basic reason to worry is that from the beginning, when scientists looked at this new virus, the one that causes COVID-19, they noticed one particular part of this big genome, the genomic sequence, that they said, whoa, that's a little weird. And it is part of what we all have learned is the spike protein part of the genomic sequence. And it's actually at a particular site of that spike protein on the genome, the gene that codes for the spike protein, I should say. And it technically is called a furon cleavage site. What it does, these 4 amino acids that are coded by this genome, it lets the virus be more infective. It lets the virus into the human cell. From the very beginning, scientists were saying, whoa, there's that furon cleavage site. How did that get there? Did that come from evolution? Or did perhaps someone stick it in there in a laboratory experiment? Okay, that's what the scientists were saying, and they were starting to explain that to me. I turned to the members of my own task force and I said, these are real questions being asked. Show me the data of these experiments and these proposals that you've been involved in, which is why they were on the task force, because they were experts in this area. They said, oh, no, we can't show you that proposal. And I said, what do you mean? I'm chairing a commission. We're a transparent scientific body. I'm asking you for the proposal you submitted to the National Institutes of Health and to other U.S. agencies, and you're telling me you can't show me that? No, it's under Freedom of Information Act lawsuits. So I said, well, you can't be on this commission if you can't be transparent. Our whole point is transparency. Okay, I asked some of the scientists to leave. I disbanded that task force because I was very unhappy with even that procedural answer. But then, what started? What started was the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, started to unpeel part of this onion. And what they showed was a kind of, wow, are you kidding? because what they showed was from the very beginning of this pandemic, NIH got together a group of virologists and asked them in a private call, what do you think? And you know what they said? Well, some of them said, I don't see how this could have happened naturally. And others said, 50-50, lab, natural. And others said, odds on lab. And you know what? We never heard a word about that. We only heard one narrative. And then if you go a little bit more deeply, which of course I was doing hour by hour, day to day, a few days after that then secret call, which became publicly known, a first draft of a paper appeared called Proximal Origins of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And it said definitively, this is natural. He said, how did you go from a phone call where they say, we don't know, to a definitive outcome? Well, quite suspicious. And when you look at the argument why it couldn't have come from a lab, the footnote, the critical footnote, was to a 2014 article about a 2020 outbreak. Okay, that is weird.
Wait, I don't understand. I don't understand. So there was an article that was talking about an anticipated.
So here's the story. March 2020, the critical article comes out saying this is natural. And then they say in the text, it couldn't have come from a lab experiment because we know from the lab that this virus, this kind of virus, was not being used in the lab. So it couldn't have come from the lab. Footnote number 20 to 2014. I said, what do you mean? Didn't some research get done between 2015 and 2019?
Right.
Well, something was, it makes your blood pressure rise a little bit and your hair stand on end. Then came the next bombshell of the FOIA release, and The Intercept carried this. And it is a grant proposal that is called the Diffuse grant proposal. People can find it online at the internet, download it, fun reading. It's a lot of high-level virology, but it says on page 10, and you just can't make this stuff up. It says, we've collected a lot of virus strains of this kind of virus, and now we're going to test them for how infectious they are. And for those that don't have a furon cleavage site, we're going to insert a furon cleavage site. Oh my God. In other words, the experiment that could have created this virus is described in the grant proposal. This is hair-raising. This is at the end of 2021. Okay, what was the reaction? The reaction of NIH was, well, it wasn't approved, that grant proposal. I'm sorry.
And moreover, they said because it wasn't funded, it must not have happened. The research must not have happened, right? That's their excuse.
Course. So, anyone in my business, which is academia, which puts in for grant proposals, knows you do some research.
Yeah.
Even to make the grant proposal, you may do the whole proposal, even if the funding is turned down, because you get some other funding. Are we going to have a serious grown-up discussion in this country? Why are these things even being proposed? Who was doing them? What did they do? So what we're calling for is grown-up truth. We're not saying this is a lab leak or lab manipulation. We're saying it sure could have been, because the techniques to do exactly the insertion of this absolutely notable part of this virus were not only known, they were proposed, and many experiments on other viruses had done exactly this. So there is reason to worry, I'd say up to here, reason to worry that this could have come out of laboratory research. And the NIH position has been, we're not talking about it. And basically, really a kind of stonewall, I'm sorry to say, from our top biomedical institution not dealing with this honestly, telling the public, look, there is concerning research. There are experiments like this. We have the following reasons to believe that it did not happen here, or we don't know, or but we have looked into it on our side. So what we have, by the way, when Biden came in, he called for a 90-day investigation by the intelligence community, the IC. They made a report, not a detailed public report. They are the intelligence community.
Right.
But they gave us a page. Thank you so much. And the page said, we don't know. We don't know. Both are viable. They said some agencies believe this came out of a lab. Whoa, why? Tell us. Don't just leave us there. And then immediately, did that make news? No, that was the end of the story. One page, stop. Well, that makes you wonder also. And they said, we won't know unless China cooperates. That, by the way, is the point of our article. If this came out of a lab, it was US biotechnology that made that possible. The US had actually trained the people at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. They were engaged with them. They were part of the same grant proposals. This was teamwork. So have you investigated our side? And if the IC has said, we don't know, we've got at least one of our agencies thinking this is lab, can you tell us a little more, please? We're supposedly a democracy. We're the American people. We've had more than 1 million deaths. So we would like to know a little bit more about this. That's really the point of what we're calling for.
And it was also it was a DARPA related lab as well, wasn't it? Did I read that?
Well, this is another part of this, which is the proposal that went out was to DARPA, which is the Defense Department.
Right.
Even under the U.S. organization, the biodefense side of things is a lot of it's housed at NIH. So there was a lot of NIH funding. There was a proposal to DARPA. There are things we don't know. We don't really know what's going on. We're told, don't worry, everything's under control. I'll tell you a couple things that I know for sure. For sure. First, not everything's under control. Second, I don't trust the government when it says, don't worry, everything's under control. I want to know what's going on. What are the programs? I want us to be a democracy with transparency and accountability. And I'm not saying that this is from a laboratory. I'm saying that it could have been, and that there are so many pieces of evidence that raise the need for an independent investigation. And I am saying that NIH has not behaved properly in this. It just has not been transparent. And we need transparency.
So, Professor Sachs, is this all just a massive cover-up to avoid liability? I mean, what exactly are the conflicts of interest here, other than simply not wanting to be accountable, either legally, financially? I don't even know. It seems like anybody who was responsible for this would be judgment-proof, given the enormous cost, and both in human life and economic costs that have accrued because of COVID-19. But is there something other than not wanting to take that responsibility, that kind of accountability? Are there other conflicts of interest that are driving the desire for these scientists at NIH to want to cover up, if not that it was lab leak, that it could have been lab leak? I mean, honestly, even that, the idea that they're going through all of these efforts and there's this much opacity starts to suggest that there's a there. I mean, I don't want to jump to conclusions, and I appreciate
exactly.
Your
by the way, for us, we're non-scientists, and so we're looking at, but we know a lot about government. So we're looking at
how history of science major.
Right. So we're looking
I did an internship at Science Magazine.
No. I know that, but what I mean is, we're okay. I don't want to even pretend for one moment I know one word more than the scientists have explained to me about this. I wouldn't know a furon cleavage site if I tripped over it before. I never heard of it before it became, the center of my daily life. But I do know a lot about government. And boy, I don't like the way they're acting, because I want our government to treat the American people like citizens and like grown-ups. And so that is not happening, and it needs to happen. That's number one. Number two, and again, we've got to really have to stress, nobody knows, even the scientists that say, oh my God, this was made in a lab. They say it was probably made in a lab. And many say it could have been. And some say not at all, but most say, we got two viable hypotheses here. But I think we do need to think about it the following ways. First, the enormity of this pandemic means that, oh my God, if this really came out of scientific research by accident, by the way, no one that I know of seriously, nobody seriously views this as intentional. If it did come out of the lab, it was an accident. And I take that view entirely. And by the way, what we know about this airborne virus is if it came out of a lab, probably came out of somebody that had no idea they were infected and maybe never had symptoms even. So even the lab people may not know. I mean, they may not know, what exactly happened, but they would know what experiments were being done. That they would know. Okay, so, but the enormity of this, the estimate is 15 million deaths so far. Can you imagine this would be the biggest human-made disaster, short of a war? But I mean, of a single event, it would be incomparable. So nobody wants to even contemplate that. I think keep this away from us. That's one part of the story. Another part of the story for a lot of working day-to-day virologists is we do this research. You think it's dangerous. We know it's necessary to make drugs, vaccines, and scientific advance. You're ignorant. Don't stop us from doing this research. They don't want to be closed down from the kind of biological biotechnology techniques right now. And, I have some sympathy with that because we have a pretty anti-science attitude many times. And the scientific community delivers lots of important things.
Sure, but we could have been having a different we could have been having a conversation about how to make that research safer. They foreclosed that.
Absolutely. Because, what happened, it's strange. The research that was being done, and I don't think anyone denies this, of manipulating the SARS-like viruses in China with the U.S. techniques, and I mind you, this is a partnership, was being done in what's called a BSL-2 facility. Because under NIH rules, and this is another thing I'd like them to explain to us honestly, under NIH rules, working with the SARS-like viruses, not necessarily the current one, but the one from the 2003 outbreak, did not require the highest level of biosafety. And it was being done, and scientists say to me that work in the lab, oh my God, an airborne virus in a BSL-2, don't even think about it. It's so recklessly dangerous because it's not with all those, the spacesuits and the tubes and the negative pressure rooms and all the rest. It's basically on a lab desk, maybe with a gown and a lock on the door and maybe a mask, but basically without the protections that you would say, my God, you're working with a dangerous pathogen. So could NIH explain that to us?
Also with the part of this that I don't think we've talked about is that the furon spike, the matches to the human respiratory system. So the people who were working on it presumably knew that it had a particular, not just that it was airborne, but that it had a particular ability to affect your air systems. The way,
Yeah, this is another part of the mystery of the early outbreak, which is it took several weeks for WHO and for the world to say this is spread by respiratory and by air. And it took even another year to say it's spread across rooms by aerosol, not just by being spat on by someone standing next to you. So it took too long to recognize the danger. But a virologist looking at this and knowing the history and looking at the virus as it is, should have said, this is alarming.
Yeah.
And we didn't get that alarm at all clearly. Of course, lots of things were going on. We had Trump, oh my God. But more than that, the scientists weren't being clear at all about what was going on. They could have been. And what we know from all the FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act releases, they had a lot of worries that we never heard about.
So what's going to happen? You're on this Lancet, you chaired this Lancet panel, which I'm sure some folks over there are now regretting.
No, I hope not. I hope not.
But I mean, those of us who have been skeptical for a long time about the kind of very opaque information we've been getting about all of this for the past 2 years are grateful for you being one of the few people who's open to entertaining this at a high level, to be pursuing this. What's next? What is the likelihood of there being an investigation? What can we look forward to? What should people, outside in the activist community be agitating for in terms of disclosures?
I think it's very odd. In the Congress, it's almost all Republicans that are pursuing this. And I think it's a combination of a couple of things. First, at the beginning, it looked like, point the finger at China. Okay, that seemed to be popular, especially in the Republican Party. And there were already these kinds of claims made last year, including 2 years ago, in the last year of the Trump administration. And the anti-China bit, then I think they realized as they started to pull on this thread in the House and the Senate on the Republican side, this is a little weird. This isn't just China. This leads back to NIH. What's going on here? And so they went to Fauci and said, what's going on? And Fauci said, no, absolutely nothing to look at here. A pretty strong shouting match between Fauci and Rand Paul.
Dr. Fauci, knowing that it is a crime to lie to Congress, do you wish to retract your statement of May 11th where you claimed that the NIH never funded gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator Paul, I have never lied before the Congress, and I do not retract that statement. This paper that you are referring to was judged by qualified staff up and down the chain as not being gain of function. Let me finish.
You take an animal virus and you increase its transmissibility to humans. Right. You're saying that's not gain of function?
Yeah, that is correct. And Senator Paul, you do not know what you are talking about, quite frankly. And I want to say that officially. You do not know what you are talking about. You get
NIH,
one person.
Let's read from the NIH definition of gain of function. This is your definition that you guys wrote. It says that scientific research that increases the transmissibility among mammals is gain of function. They took animal viruses that only occur in animals and they increased their transmissibility to humans. How you can say that is not gain of function?
It is not.
It's a dance, and you're dancing around this because you're trying to obscure responsibility for 4 million people dying around the world from a pandemic.
The Democratic Party side media jumped to the defense of Fauci and said, look at these Republican conspiracy theorists. So this became politicized quickly inside the congressional committees. Almost all the action has been on the Republican side. Mm-hmm. What do I think we should do? Mm-hmm. I'm a Democrat. I want to tell the Democratic side, this isn't conspiracy theory. This is in need of congressional oversight right now. Don't make it a partisan thing. Just let's have some transparency and honesty right now. Work together to find out what's going on. That, I think, is the strongest message. This is not a partisan issue. This is a public health issue. This is a scientific responsibility issue. This is an accountability issue. It is not a partisan issue. It's not a China issue. It's a U.S. issue.
Yeah. Hey, YouTube. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.